I'm proud of him, and that even though he isn't here with us, but he died as a true hero. I miss everything about him.
In the moment that the officers and I had to come see the children, my biggest reaction was, I don't have 7 arms. I have 7 children who just lost their father, and I don't have 7 arms to wrap around them.
I'm Frank Silla, chairman of the Stephen Silla Tunnel to Towers Foundation. Our foundation is committed to delivering mortgage-free homes for Gold Star families and fallen first responder families.
To not have to worry financially is a huge peace of mind. The thought of, what in the world will I possibly do to pay the bills? How will I possibly let the children have a life that feels normal? I don't want them to have to quit their piano lessons or their basketball. I don't want them to feel that we have to move into a little apartment and struggle financially in addition to the emotional weight.
There are over 1,000 families that need our help. Tunnel to Towers is honoring those heroes that risk their lives by providing them with mortgage-free homes.
Those who serve us and then lay down their lives protecting our freedoms and our safety, the least we can do is $11 a month to give them that peace of always knowing there's a home, there's that sanctuary when life feels like it's been tipped upside down, because it has, when you lose a parent in the line of duty, to know you can go home, you can be safe, there's no risk of losing your home. That's a peace of mind that I can't believe you can get for $11 a month.
I'd like to ask you to contribute $11 a month to support their efforts.
Please donate $11 a month by calling 1-844-BRAVEST or visit tunneltotowers.org.
You are listening to KLRN Radio, where liberty and reason still reign. I'm Noble McIntyre of McIntyre Law, and I've been representing injured Oklahomans and their families for almost 30 years. At our firm, we've handled hundreds of crashes involving semis. They are huge vehicles, and when fully loaded, can weigh as much as 80,000 pounds. Most semi drivers are careful and professional drivers, but some big truck drivers and the companies they drive for are dangerous, and I've personally seen the devastating effects on families. If you or a loved one has been affected by a semi crash, contact us at 405-777-7000 or McIntyreLaw.com. We will fight for you.
Achieve platinum status in the Fuel Rewards program at Shell and save 10 cents per gallon on every fill. Right now, you're less than 5 miles away from your closest Shell, so make a pit stop this afternoon and fill your tank with Shell V-Power Nitro Plus Premium Gasoline. Click the screen now to learn more about platinum status in the Fuel Rewards program or download the Shell app today. Platinum status is earned with 12 fill-ups over 3 months. 10-gallon minimum per fill-up at participating Shell locations. Terms apply. Visit www.fuelrewards.com/status.
It's back to school season for the kiddos, which means it's the perfect time to get your vacay on. Beaches are empty, resorts are quiet, and Cheap Caribbean Vacations has fall vacay deals up to, wait for it, 45% off.
Plus, you can store more site-wide savings and take an extra $50 off your booking now through September 5th. Take this as your sign to pencil in a vacay this fall and turn back to school season into back to beach season.
Go to cheapcaribbean.com to find your next all-inclusive vacay. Offer ends September 5th.
You can achieve platinum status in the Fuel Rewards program at Shell twice as fast by filling up 6 times with Shell V-Power Nitro Plus Premium Gasoline. Right now, you're less than 5 miles away from your closest Shell, so make a pit stop this afternoon and fill your tank with Shell V-Power Nitro Plus Premium Gasoline. Click the screen now to learn more about platinum status in the Fuel Rewards program or download the Shell app today. Platinum status is earned with 12 fill-ups over 3 months. $10 minimum per fill-up for participating Shell locations. Terms apply. Visit www.fuelrewards.com/status.
KLRN Radio has advertising rates available. We have rates to fit almost any budget. Contact us at advertising@klrnradio.com.
Hi, everyone. This is JJ, the co-founder of Good Pods. If you haven't heard of it yet, Good Pods is like Goodreads or Instagram, but for podcasts. New, it's social, it's different, and it's growing really fast. There are more than 2 million podcasts, and we know that it is impossible to figure out what to listen to. On Good Pods, you follow your friends and podcasters to see what they like. That is the #1 way to discover new shows and episodes. You can find Good Pods on the web or download the app. Happy listening.
The following program contains coarse language and adult themes. Listener discretion is advised.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to He Said, She Said. I am one of your hosts for tonight, Aggie, and with me is the very awesome Rick. How are you doing this evening?
I'm doing all right. I kind of fell down on my producer gig tonight. I couldn't figure out when to find time to cut together a special intro since we were doing vampires, so I just went with one of the scary ones we had in the books. But yeah, I feel
it works.
feeling kind of bad, but in between the Trump rally that started later than it was supposed to and ran longer than anybody expected it to, and a new show we were carrying, I didn't even get to eat till almost 5:30, and I was like, and then I sat down for an hour, and then I was regretting it because then I had like a million things to do in like the 45 minutes before we were on the air.
Oh yeah, it's amazing how the you schedule your everything for your day, and as soon as somebody goes over the time allotment, you're screwed. You're completely screwed. It doesn't matter what it is.
Yeah, well, I mean, and it's like that for me now, really, really badly. I can't make people in my life understand that. I'm like, you guys realize with everything that I'm trying to do, I have pretty much every second of my day scheduled for at least 5 out of the 7 days of the week. I have everything like timed down to nearly the minute to try to squeeze in everything. And then every time I turn around, it's like, well, can you help me with this? Can you help me with that? Like, ugh, you guys just won't get it. This is my job now. Stop it.
Yeah, I did hear the rally went a little long, and it was really cool to see the new show. That was neat. I stuck around for a few minutes, but I had to work because I also got behind on my schedule. I'm just dragging today. I did not sleep well last night, so forgive me, people, if I'm just not really peppy tonight.
Just randomly shout out brains every few minutes, and we'll understand.
Yes, I'm kind of in a zombie. I'm kind of zombified right now. This is true. Hopefully, I will be able to sleep a little better tonight. So,
You need to find some wood to knock on and do it now because you just jinxed it if you don't.
I know. Oh, hey, my new desk, solid pine. There you go. So, how did the rally go?
Well, it started about 30 minutes later than it was supposed to, which is kind of normal anymore. I guess the Secret Service gets kind of nervous, so they're doing like triple checks now because they don't want to get anybody else fired or nearly killed. But I mean, it was
Mostly fired.
Yeah, I didn't actually watch all of it because I was doing other stuff, but the little bit I heard was pretty good. I mean, he did what he usually does, gets everybody riled up and excited. I don't know. I just, with as much as I enjoy being able to do things like that and cover these kind of things all the time now, I'm just like, how many days till the election again?
I know.
Can we be done yet?
Yeah, there are days that are like, is it here yet? And there are other days that are like, holy shit, it's almost here,
Well, it's
I can't decide.
This whole thing of, like, I mean, it was one thing when it was really only our side that knew how shady the other side really was, and everybody's like, "Oh no, you're just nuts." And now everybody's starting to see it, and they're like, "Holy!" And I'm sitting here like Bruce Willis style. Welcome to the party, pal. Well, I've been trying to tell you guys for 16 years that one side was a hell of a lot worse than the other one, but glad you're here.
Yeah, better late than never, I suppose.
I don't know. That's kind of what I'm afraid of. I think it may be too late because I have this little nagging feeling in the back of my head that all this good news coming out in the polls is basically just a psyop to try to convince all the Republicans to stay home, and that's why anytime I see anybody post anything like that, I'm like, no,
No, don't believe the polls. I don't care what the polls say. Don't ever believe a poll because they're always weighed in one direction or the other. It's never really a solid sampling of the population. And like you said, sometimes they are trying to dissuade you from, there's so many of my friends are black pilled, and I'm like, you cannot lose hope. Just don't do that because that's exactly what they want from you.
Yeah, I mean that's exactly what they want. That's why I try not to do it. But
They want you demoralized. They want you to give up. They just want you to say, well, there's no way to stop them. Once you're at that point, they win.
yeah, no, I agree. And I don't know. It's like I said, the longer this goes on, the more I'm like, okay, this really kind of needs to be over now. But then you see like people waking up because 60 Minutes did like some shady editing and stuff, and I'm like, see, I told you. And then there's all this other stuff that people are finally starting to ask questions about Imhoff's girlfriend. They got smacked in a circle. Like, that took you long enough. That story's only been out since like October 2nd. Nice of you to finally start asking questions.
I think one of my favorite things today was seeing him being referred to as a second gentle person. And I'm like, well, I guess you've been effectively neutered if you're going with person. I mean, I did not understand that at all.
I mean, I don't understand any of it, but what I find absolutely amazing, and then we'll start moving into the actual topic of the show, was listening to Barack Obama shaming black men for refusing to vote for Kamala Harris, when all men have heard for the last 10 years is they're worthless and toxic and they didn't need us anymore.
They suck. Yeah, we don't need you. We don't need men, blah, 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 blah.
It's kind of funny.
It's amazing how everybody that says we don't need men, then suddenly they cry because men say, okay, and walk away. But anyway, it's a whole different type of suck that we are going to discuss tonight.
Yeah, we are not talking about the suck of politics. We're talking about the suck of vampire movies and, well, other vampire adaptations that may or may not make it into the mix. But mostly movies because reasons. But yeah, so I don't know. How many do you even have on your list? Did you stick to 5 this time, or how many you have?
Actually, I had more because what I did was I did my favorite, best, favorite, worst. Actually, just the best, the ones I consider the best vampire movies, the ones I consider the worst vampire movies, the best takes on the vampire story lore, and the worst takes of vampire lore, and the funniest ones. So I have at least 15.
You're counting all over the place, but that's kind of cool.
But like I said, we don't have to cover all of them. If you just want to stick to the best adaptations of the lore itself, then the best different takes, that kind of thing. That's cool too.
We can do best and worst because I have a little bit of both, so that's fine too. But so I don't know. Ladies first. Where you want to start?
Well, we can start with the best.
What do you got? What do you got at the start of your list there for that one?
Well, tied for number 1 are 3 films, and ironically, they're all called Dracula.
Nice.
Yes, the version from the 30s with Lugosi, the one from 70. I want to say it was 78 or 79 with Frank Langella, and the one with Gary Oldman. I have to say, all 3 of those really, really tied because they were all different in the portrayal of Dracula. The first, Bela Lugosi made him this gentleman with a creepy and dark veneer, and what we came to know as the blah blah blah, and then here comes Frank Langella, and he makes him into this very sensual, different type of Dracula. And oh my gosh, I'm not even kidding when I tell you that my mom and her sisters and every older female that I knew that watched this movie absolutely loved him. They all cried when he died. And I'm like, he's the bad guy. Yes, but he was so wonderful. I'm like, really? It was hilarious. It's one of my mom's favorite movies to this day, too. And then, not that there was a different take with the Gary Oldman version, so much as that it was very vivid. And the costumer did such a beautiful job with all of the costumes. Everything had a specific symbolism attached to it. Every single piece of costume had some symbolism. The effects were just ethereal, and and because we're used to a very dark, very kind of shrouded film, but this one, the colors were so vivid. It just, I remember when it came out, people were like, it's not that great. I'm like, to this day, people are talking about that movie, and that movie came out in '92. So like, I'm pretty sure it was a really good movie. We just weren't ready for it to be that vivid in color, in the cinematography, everything. So I think that's why they're all tied at number one for me.
Yeah, I mean, so of course the original Dracula, the one that started it all, is on my list too. But because I figured you were gonna have that one, I kind of went a different direction. So I have my top three for the best, not counting the originals, are kind of a hodgepodge. So the first one that came to mind that I absolutely loved, and this one was from 2009, was a movie called Daybreakers. Um, and basically, so trying not to give too many spoilers for people who haven't seen it, but it 2009. So basically, the premise of the movie is this is 10 years after a plague that turned almost all of the world's population into vampires, and then a blood shortage causes all kinds of panic and other issues. The thing that I loved about this one is it came out in a time when vampire movies were kind of making a resurgence. There was 30 Days of Night and a bunch of other things that goes on, which is also on my list. This one had kind of more of a darker sci-fi undertone to it, which had me hooked from the beginning. Plus, I mean, it's got Willem Dafoe in it. So
Oh yeah.
yeah. So it had Ethan Hawke, Willem Dafoe, Claudia Carvin, and Michael Dorman.
It was a really cool concept on the whole thing. And, I remember Twilight Zone kind of touched on that same concept in a also a vampire episode. It was a new Twilight Zone. And they, the guy was sent off at some remote place in Siberia to look for somebody who disappeared. And he gets there, finds out it's the entire village is it's vampires. And they cannot be, they don't want to be found out because then, the government would kill them. So, and they're the last ones. And so they're trying, but because it's usually dark during most days of that remote region, they can thrive there. And so the guy, I think it was George D'Souza who was in that episode. And he came back and said, no, it was an accident, blah, 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 and all that stuff. Well, what about that place? Oh, it's fine. There's nothing much going on. And then as he turns, you see the fangs because he decided to protect them too. So it was a really cool take. But I always thought that 30 Days of Night was a really cool adaptation because of the concept of it being dark for so long in one area. I always thought that was perfect.
Yeah, to me, I mean, there were a lot of critics that complained that the plot at points kind of became erratic and it was kind of all over the place. But I really enjoyed the whole thing. I mean, because it was one of the first movies that I'd ever seen where it was, I mean, you're talking about a small town in Alaska. I think if I remember correctly, the town was called named Barrow. And there they have basically an entire month of night. So, I mean, could you think of a better place for vampires to hang out?
No. Excellent feeding ground,
But, I mean, I actually loved everything about it. But yeah, apparently, because I was reading through some notes for some critics to get ready for today, and they hated it. They were like, great in idea, terrible execution. I'm like, were we watching the same movie?
I didn't think it was bad. And as a matter of fact, I cannot think of anyone who didn't like that film. It did pretty good in the box office as well. I mean, it did better than expected, actually.
Yeah, I mean, well, and
So,
again, I think part of the reason why it got such a bad kind of reviewing from the critics is this was during the time when, for some reason, vampires had kind of made a resurgence because you had, like the Blade movies weren't too far removed from this. There's another one that I can't think of the name of right now. Underworld. That's the one I'm looking for.
oh yeah.
So I mean, so yeah, I said Underworld was 2003. I think Blade came out in 98. These were coming out in early 2000s. So I mean, they were all coming out around the same time as far as movies go. So I think there was just so much in the market that everybody started to get cranky about it. But I absolutely loved the take on the movie. And my other one is a little weird. I actually found this one by accident a long time ago and absolutely loved it. And it may be one that not too many people have heard of. It's got a long title, so bear with me. The Fearless Vampire Killers, or pardon me, but your teeth are in my neck.
Oh, I
From
remember that.
from 1967. It was a vampire fiction, a horror spoof, and part Central European epic, and 100% Roman Polanski. So yeah,
I
so,
remember when that movie came out.
yeah, it's based on a vampire hunter by the name of Professor Broncius, played by Jack McGowan. I think I just butchered his name, but it's okay. And his faithful assistant Alfred, played by Roman Polanski, and they're traveling across Transylvania. And of course, they start running into vampires. So you guys probably know the rest of it from there. But it was an absolutely just, I mean, great take overall. I mean, this one actually got good reviews from the public and the critics. There's only 34 critic reviews, but it still scored 71% on Rotten Tomatoes. There's been like 10,000 reviews by people, and the popcorn meter 76%. So if you haven't seen it yet, I would recommend it. It's pretty. It's
Oh,
on.
I remember seeing it a long time ago.
Apparently also on Prime Video again, so I may actually be watching that tonight. Because I haven't watched it in a while, but it came when I was going through the notes. I was like, I remember this one. I absolutely love this one. I've seen it like 14 times.
That's
but yeah,
very cool.
It was considered it was produced as a comedy, but it fell so hard into the horror genre that it kind of takes on both flavors. So it was a fun one.
Okay, so where are we at?
Well, I went through. You kind of started with your favorite three, so I just kind of ran through my.
Oh
favorite
no, that was my favorite one. I couldn't pick one.
Well, yeah, but that's what I'm saying. I think I probably have more picked than you in the long run, so I just figured I'd run through three since you already ran through three. So where do you want to go next?
Well, I guess one of my other favorite ones, and I know this is silly, but Hotel Transylvania. I love that movie.
Oh, see, that was one that was on my list.
I thought, I mean, the whole concept of the hotel for monsters so that they're shielded from humans was really cool. And then to find out that humans really like monsters was, so eye-opening for them. And I loved all of the voices were perfect. It was very cute and a well done story. So I think that's my number two. But number three, I don't know if anybody remembers this one. It's called Innocent Blood. Do you remember that one?
Oh, the title sounds familiar, but I don't remember if I've seen it or not.
Yeah, Innocent Blood came out, I want to say it was late 80s, 89, maybe 90, somewhere about there.
92.
Okay. And it starts Anne Parillaud, who is a French actress. Most people know her from The Man in the Iron Mask with Leonardo DiCaprio. She played the mom, the Dowager Queen. She is a vampire, but she only takes the blood of evildoers.
I have seen this. I had to look it up to remember that I'd seen it. The funny thing is, it was Chaz Palmentary that reminded me that I'd seen it. When I saw his face, I was like, "Wait, I remember this movie."
Yeah, it was a really cool take on the whole. That was the first time that I recall introducing a vampire who is trying to do the right thing. And, she just limits the blood sucking to criminals, the bad guys, the evil. But unfortunately, she doesn't finish the job with a mobster. And so he becomes a vampire too. So things kind of go haywire on that one. It's a really cool movie. She had absolutely no problem doing full frontal in that movie. And I was just like, wow, because I went with my boyfriend to see this film. And I was kind of like shocked. And he was all about it. But I was just like, I did not expect that at all. But it actually worked with the film and her character. She was extreme and another sensual vampire as well. But like I said, she had a strict code. And so it was Anthony LaPaglia was the detective that was in charge of figuring out who was committing all these murders, and she would try to cover them up so that she would suck the blood and then shoot them in the neck to cover up her fangs, the telltale punctures, that kind of thing. And so I think Don Rickles was in this movie too, and of course Don Rickles makes everything better. So highly recommend. If y'all haven't seen it, it's one of my absolute faves. And yes, that one is coming out this weekend while I paint little ghosts on canvases.
Yeah. So just to kind of cover the main cast, of course, it was Anna. I don't know how to say her last name, but you said it fairly well a minute ago. Robert Loggia played Sally the shark Maselli. Anthony LaPaglia was in it, of course. David Proval, Don Rickles, and Chaz Palmentary. For all the guys who were peaked by Full Frontal,
giggity giggity, giggity goo.
it is available in most rental platforms for a price ranging from $2.99 to $3.99. So knock yourself out. Anyway, so my next one is kind of more of a small screen adaptation, and it's not strictly about vampires, and it's been redone a few times, and so I guess it's got big screen adaptations too. But at some point, Wednesday kind of became the star of the show in all of the adaptations. Everybody seems to forget that there was a vampire vampire involved in a particular family, or maybe I think I'm thinking of the Munsters. Never mind. Yeah, I'm thinking of the Munsters. I almost jumped sharks there. But yeah, so
yes, Lily was the vampire.
Lily was the vampire in the Munsters, and that was
Grandpa.
Wait, was it Grandpa? That's right.
Yeah, Grandpa.
Lily was kind of the riff on Bride of Frankenstein, I think. But yeah, so and Grandpa was kind of the cute vampire, so he kind of got me into the idea of vampires because my only experience with vampires before then was the original Dracula movie, and we've already established how much those black and white scary movies freaked me out when I was a kid. So seeing kind of a doting vampire kind of got me over that a little bit, and then I started exploring a little bit more. Not exactly the best adaptation, but still a very long running series that had some cool stuff going on, and there was kind of for a while it seemed, I'm guessing there was probably a competition between the Addams Family and the Munsters, but I only ever saw them in syndication, so I don't really know for sure.
Coolness. Oh man. Okay. Do you have any good ones? Any other good ones, or do you want to move on to bad ones?
No, I mean I've got a couple more. Hang on. So another one that I actually kind of liked, which is not a very favorite one, but I kind of liked it. Which I guess the critics liked it. I don't think the people that were watching it did. But it's called Vampire Hunter D. It was released in 2000. Another one that's kind of just a weird take on vampires. So Vampire Hunter D's gothic charms may be lost on those unfamiliar with the anime series, and believe it or not, I hadn't seen the anime series, so maybe that's one reason why I wound up liking it. But basically, it's in a dark, distant future when the undead have arisen from apocalyptic ashes. Anybody seen Ghostbusters? That thing right there. An original story unfolds from there, and it had Andrew Philpott in there, John Rafer. It's just kind of an animated take on vampires. I guess everybody kind of liked it. It had 33 reviews from critics, 70% Rotten Tomatoes, 86%. Whoa, 25,000 plus ratings. So apparently it's pretty popular.
Wow.
I don't get into much anime though. I mean, I grew up watching like the American anime crossovers. Like there were a few like G-Force and Star Blazers, of course. But every once in a while, I'll find something that captures my imagination. That is apparently it's back in theaters. That's weird.
Interesting. All right, so here come the bad ones. These are the movies that some people may like them, but we just felt that I felt for my list, I felt they sucked. No pun intended.
I was gonna say if they're vampire films, wouldn't that technically mean if they're bad, they don't suck?
Okay, that's true. Okay, my number one. I'm pretty sure everybody will remember this one because it was that bad, and even the star of it still riffs on it because he really hated it. Tales from the Crypt presents Bordello of Blood.
Oh God, I forgot.
So awful. I think it came out in the mid 90s, 95, 96, somewhere about there. And it was supposed to be a comedy, and there are some funny bits in it. Most of them are Dennis Miller's. But I mean, it's just, and there's some big names in this one too. And a lot of people were just like, I can't believe you did that movie. Like, well, it wasn't just Dennis. Okay. I mean, Erica Eleniak was in it, also known as the Wet and Wild video entree of Under Siege. She was also in Baywatch, but everybody prefers the Under Siege montage of her dancing. So that's why I was bringing her. Angie Everhart was in it. Corey Feldman. And interestingly enough, Chris Sarandon was in it, who is in one of my favorite horror movies as a vampire. So, it was, I had to go watch it. A, my sister didn't want to go by herself. And B, Chris Sarandon was in it. So I wanted to see how this went. And I was just like, man, this sucks. I was just completely like, I was not entertained watching that entire movie. And I know it was supposed to be a horror comedy, I suppose, but it fell flat. The whole thing fell flat for me.
I can see that.
Well, I mean, because you expect it's Dennis Miller, and at the time he was pretty famous as a comedian, so you expected it to be, funny, okay? And I don't know. I don't know what happened. I've no idea what happened, but and it was based on a story by Robert Zemeckis, and it was just awful. I cannot stress that enough. But, if you like something campy and you want to watch something that's really bad, if you're into, bad movies, this is definitely there. So, you can make a game out of this movie easily.
Yeah, drinking game, but then nobody would be awake to drive you home. No, I mean, the thing with Zemeckis is it's either hit or miss. He either puts out really good stuff, or you're like, what the fuck did I just pay to watch this?
You know, I bet if I watch this movie again, I'm gonna like it. I bet you anything. It's just that I watched it that one time and I just did not like it, and I never went back to it. So I should give it another chance. But as it stands, I would put it on the bad category.
You should give it another chance, and then report back if your eyes don't start bleeding and stuff like that. Anyway, okay, so my top worst. Well, I don't know. I think I'm gonna start with my next because I have several bad. So I'm just gonna kind of start going kind of in order from least of the worst to the worst of the worst. So one, and I think if I remember right, I think you and Brad talked about this one last night. Once Bitten. That has to be probably my least of the worst because it was campy enough that I actually did kind of enjoy it a bit. But holy shit.
Yeah, it was a bad feeling. But you know what? If you're there just for Lauren Hutton, it's enough. I mean,
Lauren Hutton sold the whole thing. So I'm just saying.
Yeah, I don't think she wore any underwear throughout the entire film. Honest to God. And then you're greeted by an 8-foot by 5-foot portrait of her undressed. You know, she's naked in it. So that alone is worth the price of admission. But if you're looking for a plot, that movie's not it. If you're looking to look at Lauren Hutton, that movie is it.
Giggity giggity. Giggity goo.
I mean, who's not looking for reasons to look at Laura Hutton? But yeah, and then my next up on the oh my god, this could have been so great and somehow you screwed it up list, Van Helsing from 2004.
I was so disappointed in that movie.
That movie
it's
had
on my
so
list. But yeah, it had a really good cast. This is what but that just goes to prove a really good cast cannot save a movie if the movie's not well written or it was a slog. And I was like, at the ending, I'm like, what the shit? I was so pissed.
How could you possibly go wrong though with Hugh Jackman like beating the crap out of everybody's favorite monsters? It was 90 minutes of Hugh Jackman supposedly beating the crap out of Dracula, Werewolf, Jekyll and Hyde, and a lot of others. I was like, how can you fuck that up? But you fucked it up. I don't understand.
Fucked it up.
But yeah, so yeah, it was absolutely terrible. Do not recommend. And then next up towards my list of the vampire movies that do suck, and this is actually the flip side of the vampire movies that did suck a minute ago. 30 Days of Night, Dark Days, released in 2010. How did you go from one of the coolest ideas ever to this?
I think it always happens. That always happens. But yeah, it's I'm like,
I was like really excited when that came out. I was like, oh, they did another one. And you know, like I said, the critics hated the first one. The critics definitely hated this one. But everybody hated this one. It wasn't just the critics.
Yes.
Everybody was like, what
it was everybody.
What did you do? It was such an awesome premise the first time, and then you just went, hey, let's try to make some more money off of it. Oh, never mind, we killed it.
Yeah, that one was really bad. I cannot stress how bad that was. I had hope for it because I did like 30 Days of Night. So I figured, well, there's a sequel. Maybe it won't be as good. I told myself this because most of the time, with very few exceptions, the sequel won't be as good. But
yeah,
this wasn't. No, this was horrifying, and not in a good way.
Well, I mean, it's like, you know, one of the best movies of all time as far as Star Trek people are concerned is Star Trek 2, which was technically a sequel, but it doesn't hold up either. If you go watch it now, you're looking at all these things going, what the hell? But compared to the first movie, it was absolutely awesome, and it actually launched a genre that led to so many different things. So yeah, there are rare exceptions where a sequel does fairly good, and there's also this weird rule with Trek films where the even-numbered Trek films don't suck, and that still holds true to this day, pretty much, which is weird. Even with the newer But yeah, sequels aren't always a good thing, and that's honestly, I mean, we mentioned this on another show not too long ago. With them deciding that Top Gun Maverick is now going to get another installment, I'm like, you guys probably really should have stopped there.
You should just quit.
Because
Write it out. Let the high stay.
Well, I mean, the one thing is you waited like 35 years to make the sequel, somewhere around there. Because I was, I think, maybe 16 when it. Let's see, no, 13. So I was 50 when it came out. So I'm not doing the math, but that's pretty damn close to like 33 years. But yeah, I'm like, you guys waited forever to do this one, and then because people actually didn't think it sucked, now all of a sudden you're going to try to get more out of it. I'm just like, that was probably the perfect ending for that one, because honestly, I'm pissed they never did it earlier, because I wanted to see him as a Top Gun instructor, and we never got to see that. By the time they get to this, he's like been like a test pilot, kicked out all over the place. He's still, he's like 50 something and still the rank of captain, and the only reason he hasn't been drummed out of the service was because Iceman was still alive. So I mean, there's a lot of undertones there, but it ended well, and I wish they would have left it alone, much like 30 Days of Night. Because holy crap, why did you have to fuck it up? Why did you have to?
Well, my next pick was actually not a big screen entrance. It was a small screen entrant. Do you remember Dracula 3000?
Yes.
Not Dracula 2000, Dracula 3000.
Yes, I remember. I wish I didn't, but I do remember.
It had a pretty healthy cast, I would say. I mean, very recognizable names. Casper Van Dien was in it. Again, Erica Eleniak was in it. Coolio, who is sad to say he turns into a vampire real quick. So even Tiny Lister was in it. So, it had recognizable people, but it was made for TV, and it was just, I'm just here to see the pretty people. That's all I'm doing. Because the plot was like so silly. And of course, the tagline, in space, there is no daylight. Well, I hate to disappoint you, but if there's a star around, there is technically light.
Yeah, it's kind of weird. But
so it's just like whatever. But I did find it interesting that it was Count Orlok, which is a nod to Nosferatu, I think. So they tried to have these ties with the vampire lore of film, cinema and everything, but it didn't work. It was crap.
I mean,
it's crap.
there were two saving graces in the movie: Alexandra Camp and Erica Eleniak. Those were the two saving graces.
Oh, it was Casper Van Dien for me.
Well,
he's got a great jaw. That boy has got a massively beautiful skull. I'm just gonna put that right there. Casper Van Dien, if you're listening, you got a great looking skull. He's probably gonna block me now on Twitter.
We've got Ortiz quoting Star Trek 2 in the chat. That one did not make my list, but only because I had forgotten about it until you pointed this out, or it probably would have been towards the top of my worst list.
Yeah, it was not pretty. It was not pretty, but like I said, it was made for TV. It had very recognizable names. Casper Van Dien, Starship Troopers, Erica Eleniak, Baywatch, Coolio, rapper. Just so Tiny Lister. I mean, who doesn't know Tiny Lister?
Actually, hang on. I need to correct myself real quick because I just realized I got that wrong. It was M the Great quoting Khan You and Ortiz Avies look kind of close when I'm looking at them sideways, so I apologize for getting that wrong.
So anyway, so any other bad ones for you?
I mean, yeah, where to begin?
Right?
I mean, I mean, I had a list of 16 off the top of my head as far as worst. So yeah, but as far
Yeah, it's
as we
pretty
can
ripe out there with the worst.
as we continue to move down my worst list, my next least as we move from movies that didn't suck to totally didn't suck is Vampires 1998. You ever see that one?
I don't think I did.
So yeah, so I mean, it's one of those ones that on paper sounds like it's going to be really good, and yeah, because guess who's in it?
Who?
James Woods.
Ah, oh, wait. Is that that's the one with that by John, right? John's Vampires.
Yep.
Okay, that one. All right. Yeah, I've seen that one. I was trying to figure out, I was like, how did I miss this one? James Woods. Yeah, I saw that one. And as usual, ends tragically. I hate John Carpenter for being so realistic about life. When he's being when he's tackling science fiction. And shit. But anyway. Yeah, no, that was a good movie.
Nah, I mean, well, to
I
me,
liked it just because of James Woods. I gotta
well,
say.
yeah, you liked it because of the eye candy. I get it, but and it had all the Carpenter moments, but then he took things too far. I mean, it had a great soundtrack if you're into, you know, rock and slide guitar music, things like that. Had kind of a newer, like a neo western setting thing going on. Practical effects were great in the movie, and you had, you know, James Woods rocking out as a leather-clad vampire hunter, which in New Mexico, which made all the women, you know, kind of happy at the time because, you know, he was still fairly youngish back then. But so he came off as to a lot of folks a deeply unlikable protagonist, and at the time I wasn't as much of a James Woods fan as I have become later in life, so I can kind of see where they were going with that. But the other thing that really drove me crazy about the movie is the vampires were able to get gunned down. I'm like, what? No, no, no. I mean, unless you're going the British route, and there at least better be some silver bullets or something, because that doesn't make any sense to me. But yeah, so I mean, he's had better movies, he's had worse
Yes.
movies, but this one's up there as one of the worst ones for me. And I know
No, I can dig it. I can understand why it would be one of the worst. The only reason that I enjoyed it was that once again, John decides to break my heart, and he did. So that was enjoyable. And I like the snarkiness of James' character, James Woods' character. So, but as far as the plot of the movie and everything, yeah, no, that wasn't great. That wasn't great. So I can see why this would not be one of yours.
And then I've also got one more that I want to get into because it sort of kind of ties into one of yours. We're going 1,000 years backwards in this one, though. Dracula 2000. So, and again, you know, so Dracula 3000 is kind of weird. Vampires in space, whatever. We did that in Star Trek. They had the salt vampires. They had the cloud that sucked people dry, blah, blah, blah. But this one kind of, the premise kind of intrigued me. You know, a vampire in the modern world really kind of intrigued me. And then they just went, let's just go nuts. I'm like, no. So I mean, there was one thing that I thought was interesting because, you know, it's always been a thing, vampire lore, because they don't have souls or whatever, so they don't show up in mirrors. But in this movie, one of the things that I thought was interesting is he didn't show up on any like video cameras or anything either, which was one of the first times that I had actually ever seen that portrayed that way, which makes sense. But but I mean, and there, like I said, there were some good things in it, but it didn't go well. Um, but here's the part that intrigued me because this actually goes back to some stuff that's in Jewish lore. The most interesting thing about Dracula 2000 is who it actually turns out that he is. And I'm sorry if I'm about to cause a spoiler for you folks, but this movie's been out for 24 years. So not really. So he was Judas Iscariot.
Okay.
So I thought that was kind of an interesting take because there's actually Jewish lore that because of him, accepting silver and for betraying Jesus, that's actually where all the vampires and the werewolves they're from his line. So I thought that was an interesting little take. Now again, I mean it's got decent people in it, so again it could have been better. It had Gerard Butler and Christopher Plummer in it, so it had potential. It would
But
yeah, kind of like everything we've been talking about in this segment. It had potential, but
yeah. There's always a but.
Well, the thing about it is, it was a bad watch, but it wasn't a terrible watch. It's a good one to like sit down during like October and just go, yeah, I want to be disappointed by the end, so I'm just gonna waste a couple hours watching this movie.
Well, I prefer the campier movies or the movies that I don't have to completely concentrate watching. I can do something, for the mood, that kind of thing. And I think that Dracula 2000 actually fits that because, big names, big story, one that great. You can be like cross-stitching or painting your little ghost like I'm going to plan to do like last year. I don't know what I'm doing, but it was fun. So we're doing that. But I think my last bad movie, and I may get scorched for this, but it was not a good movie, y'all. And everybody will say, but it was her last movie. And I will say, yeah. And so what? Queen of the Damned. I did not like that movie at all. Now, keep in mind, I read all of the Vampire Lestat novels up until, to include Queen of the Damned, because my girlfriend had them. So she was giving them to me to read. I would be reading them and everything. And then I've read them before the movie came out. The books themselves were actually written, in the 80s. A lot of people don't know that, but they were. I think the first book came out in 85. And, she wrote one a year. So this will be around 88 or 89 that it came out. And it's supposed to about the queen of the vampires, the head cheese, the, number one. And it starred Aaliyah, and this was her last film role. She died shortly after completing most of her scenes in that tragic plane crash. And Stuart Townsend played the, I believe, Lestat. So it was a standalone book. It wasn't necessarily like a true sequel to the other books. So the movie itself is standalone as well. But it was just, the adaptation, I do not know who did the screen adaptation for this. It was they did such a hatchet job with the book that it had almost no resemblance, in my opinion, to the spirit of what you saw in the what's his name, Tom Cruise film. So it was kind of, there was a weird vibe, just didn't mesh well. It was almost like a monkey wrote it. I don't know.
Well, so the interesting thing is this is on my list too. But to me, and the funny thing is I actually read a critic today who said basically the same thing, but I was thinking when I was putting this one on my list, this was like a feature-length music video. It didn't feel like a movie. It was all
No,
featured around.
it really
It was all.
was.
It was all featured around like heavy metal music from like Jonathan Davis. And I mean, granted, that's a pretty cultish fan base, so I'm sure there were people that really enjoyed it, but I wasn't one of them. I'm like, I understand maybe in early 2000s they were like, hey, MTV doesn't make music videos anymore. Let's make a music video movie and make it gothic and vampire-y and it'll be awesome. And then we were like, but no, it wasn't. It was terrible. Don't do that again.
Yeah, it was really disjointed. Nothing really flowed well. It was mostly like a music video, like you said. And so I was and this was a movie that I actually gave another chance to because I saw it when it first came out, when the whole Anne Rice thing was really popular. All of her books were flying off the shelves, regardless of uh, the theme behind it, because she didn't just do the Vampire Chronicles; she did several other series as well. And I figured, well, maybe I was just expecting too much, and so I watched it about 10 years after that. And no, 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 I was right in my assessment the first time. It was still bad, but it wasn't even a good campy bad, you know. So that's my last one on my list of the bad ones.
All right. So I have, as far as the worst go, I was going to call it a tie, but I think I've kind of changed it a little bit. So I've got two left on the bad side, but neither one of them really has to have a lot said about them. One of them should have been awesome. It's another one that should have checked a lot of boxes. It should have been amazing, and it just wasn't. So, and this was a horror movie or a horror comedy movie directed by Wes Craven, and it was 2 years before he made Scream. So there's no reason this shouldn't have worked, especially when you bring in Eddie Murphy as the lead character. Vampire in Brooklyn, 1995.
It was such a great idea, and it harkened back to the film of the 70s, what they called I guess black exploitation. They had a film,
Yeah.
Blackula, which was awesome, and it's still a cult classic to this day and a cult favorite as well. So it had a lot of potential, and when that came, and it had Angela Bassett. I mean, how do you fail with Angela Bassett? You know,
I know. I mean, that's enough eye candy to carry the whole thing. I'm just saying, and it didn't work. The irony is that this was also shortly after Eddie Murphy, quote unquote, came to America, and he's playing a Caribbean vampire coming to America. There were just so many weird things that were completely weird and disjointed in this movie, and it had such potential.
it did, and the thing was, it was supposed to be like a. I don't know. He just didn't do a really good take on a vampire. I don't know. It just didn't work with him.
I mean, the only upside I had for the entire movie is this was still 1995, so it was largely practical effects. There were actually some really good practical effects in the movie. So I do have to give props to the effects department. They did a lot of yeoman's work in this movie. But holy crap was the rest, especially for being an Eddie Murphy flick. I mean, I don't think I've ever seen an Eddie Murphy flick that I wound up not liking other than this one.
I don't know. Pluto Nash is kind of up there, but even that was campy enough that you could, still watch it again.
That was campy enough that it was at least worth watching again.
Right.
And
right.
then of course the top of the vampire movies that do suck from least from still maybe getting a little bit of blood to not able to suck at all. The top of the list has to be, and I blame my daughter for every single one of these fucking movies, Twilight.
Well, I know that Jeff brought up a film in the chat called Lesbian Vampire Killers, which was done in 2009. So I'm going to send you down the rabbit hole, Jeff, and recommend one called Daughters of Darkness. That came out, I believe, I want to say it was in the 70s, 71. And if you want an erotic horror film from the 70s. The costuming was excellent. Check that one out. Daughters of Darkness. It was, I want to say it was French or something like that, but it's in English, it's available. I've watched it in English. I don't think it was in French, but it
Yeah.
was done with a lot of French actors and all that stuff. Yeah, go check that one out. That one has a plot.
Well, so the lesbian vampire killers, I actually found that when I was doing research today, and I didn't have time to watch it, or it probably would have made the top of my list. But I still may actually have to go back and watch it now, just because everything I've read about it says it's absolutely terrible. So, yeah. So Jeff, I had the same question. I was like, how in 2009 did I miss a made for TV movie about lesbian vampires? I don't.
Like I said, the sapphic undertones in vampire films has always been there. I think the very first one that actually explored it was Daughters of Darkness, and it was that movie when it came out. It was extremely controversial, but very popular. And like I said, it's the way the undertone is carried through. I mean, you're not going to see X-rated anything. Obviously, it was done 1971, but the tones of the film, the way the lead vampiress is actually dressed, they made sure that her costume was always black, red, and white because she was supposed to be a Nazi. So they had that connotation running through the film. It was actually very well done film, and I highly recommend it. I had a friend when I was working for Suncoast who told me about the film. And I looked at him and I was like, I don't think that's for me. And he says, if you appreciate costuming and the symbolism behind it, you would love this movie. And he was right. I did. It was just like watching Blue Angel with Marlene Dietrich. All of the costuming, everything was symbolic. So, like I said, I was uncomfortable with the theme of it. After a while, I got over it as I got older. But it's a little bit more refined than lesbian vampire killers. I will just say that.
Nice. Well, yeah, Jeff dropped an image in Green Room, and everybody was like, "We're not in Green Room," so it's on the screen now. I'll make it go away in a second.
Yes. Yeah, James Corden, sort of stars, I guess.
Sort of.
Sorta.
So, I think the star of that picture was the Tootsie Pop. I'm just saying. Oh wait.
All right, so let's talk about the best takes on the actual lore that are not very traditional, I guess.
Sure. So what do you got?
Well, my numero uno, it's a little film that everybody says, oh, yes, but never think about it. Life Force. That was an actually really cool take on the whole vampire lore because we're from space. And it was the first time that I saw that storyline being adapted in science fiction. So for me, Life Force was a really cool film that deviated a little bit from the traditional vampire story, but did not deviate enough that you couldn't recognize it. So it was, for me, it was like, it was really cool. It starred, I want to say Steve Railsback, who was trying to make it big back in the 80s, but he never actually got out of that character persona. So, but yeah, I would have to say that's like my favorite take on the vampire lore. That's not a Dracula movie,
Yeah. No, I mean, and that's interesting that you brought that one up because that one didn't even make it onto my list today, and it probably should have because that was a really good movie.
It was. It was actually pretty cool. And when it first came out, I remember seeing the ads on TV for it. And it was, they showed the Earth, and then this giant eye blinking over it, like looking down on it. And it was an eye and it was blinking. I was like, holy crap, how big is this person? Because I was very young. I didn't realize the symbolism behind it. But, it was really neat. You end up having a hero, and the hero unfortunately has to give up his life in order to save humanity, and he has to take the woman that he loves with him because she's the bad guy. So it was actually really, it was different, at least for me at that age, to watch that and go, wow. But yeah, I think that's one of my favorite takes on the vampire story. That's not traditional.
Yeah, I mean, my favorites are actually still kind of based in traditional stuff, but they're more small screen adaptations. And so
Mhm.
people are probably going to laugh at me about these, but they're all kind of tied together, and they're from the CW, believe it or not.
Really?
Yep.
Very cool.
Yeah. So the Vampire Diaries, which honestly, I had a friend who'd been watching this show for forever and was trying to get me into it. I was like, I'm not gonna, because this was right around the same time that my daughter was forcing me to watch Twilight because she was late to the party but still wanted to watch them. She's like, but I don't have anybody that'll watch them with me. I'm like, fine.
This is why you need to pick up crochet so you can sit with somebody who's watching the movie but not really pay attention.
Oh, see that's what I figured out my phone's for. But yeah, no. So and these shows were on for a long time before I started watching them. I actually started watching them on Netflix, and by the time I started watching them, they were almost all done. But I kind of fell down this rabbit hole with them because I really got into the stories because it was a kind of a more modern take on the vampire story. Like they had ways to get around the whole sunlight thing, and there were different things that they could do that weren't weird. Like it wasn't that you can't be in the sun, you sparkle when you're in the sun. It was this was a show primarily about vampires, but it also did have werewolves and witches. And of course, the witches would create rings that the vampires could wear so they could go out in the daylight because they were actually protected from it. And it actually has Paul Wesley in it, who has become somebody that I've kind of followed his career. He actually plays young Kirk in Strange New Worlds. So
Okay.
and that's been an interesting jump because everybody's like, "So he's gonna be the one playing Kirk," and everybody's like, "It's gonna suck." I'm like, "It actually kind of doesn't. I think he actually does a little bit better job than Chris Pine did, but that's just me. I'm kind of alone in that thinking though. So, but yeah, so that one, and then that spawned another show called The Originals, which is basically from the original. I think it was like 5 or 6. I think it wound up being 6 because one didn't show up until later. The 6 original sires of vampirism. And then there was another show called Legacies, which was even more into the teeny bopper phase of everything, but was still fun to watch. And it was basically kind of you remember the Hotel Transylvania thing you were talking about earlier?
Yeah.
This is a school for creature kids.
Oh, so okay.
So it was kind of fun to watch. I don't think I've ever watched the last few episodes of the last season. I The thing about it is I get to the point where if I get invested in a show, once I know it's over, I kind of don't ever really want to finish watching them anymore because shows don't get send-offs like they used to. So then I always wind up being pissed off. So I think I still have 3 or 4 episodes of Legacies that I have never finished. So I may actually go back and do that at some point. But yeah, those are probably my favorite small screen adaptations as far as recent stuff. And it's because, and it goes back to some of the things that we talked about the first night when you were on Juxtaposition. That was one of the first things where I had heard that there was a specific type of wood is the only thing that can kill an original vampire. That was the first time I'd heard that. So that sent me down. And you know me, when I hear new things, I start digging. And then I realized it was part of vampire lore. And I'm like, that's cool because that's the first time I've ever heard anybody talk about that. That's actually in there. And this is a show that was just, I mean, CW, come on.
Right. Right. I think another really cool adaptation of it, and it's based on a comic book, I guess, Blade. I thought the concept behind a daywalker, somebody who was not directly bitten by a vampire, but has the vampirical traits and uses that power for good, was a really cool concept. A really good, they didn't deviate a lot from the actual traditional vampire story, but it deviated enough to give you a character that can go in different directions. So that was a really cool idea. Everybody shits on Blade Trinity, but you know what? I enjoyed it. I enjoyed all three. I'll be honest. I enjoyed all of them. The second one had the best action sequences out of all three. The third one was just a joke fest because it was Ryan Reynolds. And of course, Jessica Biel did not hurt at all.
I was going to say Jessica Biel was what saved that movie for me. I actually probably need to go back and watch that one because I'm not going to lie, I was not a Ryan Reynolds fan at first. He's kind of won me over the years, so I've actually gone back and been rewatching a lot of his stuff that I hated at first. Like, believe it or not, I hated, and I mean hated, the one that he just did, that they brought Wolverine back for, a Deadpool. I hated that movie at first. I did not like it at all. But yeah, and for everybody that's about to yell at me, you have to remember I did not really get into comic books when I was a kid because reading the pains confused me. So most of my superhero exposures were the old school TV shows and then the adaptations that eventually became movies. So my first real exposure to Deadpool was the preview where he's teabagging somebody, and I'm just like, that's not my thing. But I have to admit, I have come to respect it a little bit more. So I think I may actually have to go watch Blade Trinity because that was actually one that almost made my worst list. But I realized it was probably because at the time I was not a big Ryan Reynolds fan. And like I said, over the years, he's kind of won me over. Honestly, I think the favorite thing I see him do right now is those stupid Mint Mobile commercials or whatever the hell they are. When he's like, I'm giving you guys $15 per month per line, and you guys are still willing, some of you people are still willing to pay 2 and 3 times that. I don't know how to fix that.
Oh man. Let's see. I think my last one is going to be a really weird one. It'll probably screw with people's heads a little bit, but it's actually based on a Bram Stoker story. And it is a different take on the vampire lore that he himself wrote. And it's called The Lair of the White Worm. And
I'm going to have to go find this now.
That movie, it came out in late 80s. I want to say it was 88 timeframe. And it's, believe it or not, it stars Hugh Grant. Peter Capaldi's in it. Catherine Oxenberg, who was one of the candy blondes in, I want to say, Dynasty. Amanda Donoghue was in it too. And it's really weird because the genesis of this particular vampire rests on a cult that is basically that celebrates through a worm. Okay, but the worm is not a worm; it's a snake-like creature. Okay, and it lives in one of the caverns on this vast estate. It has been a legend for centuries, and people think, oh, it's just a legend, blah blah blah, and all that stuff. Well, they discover, one of the archaeologists digging there discovers this gigantic snake's head skeleton, the skeleton of the head. And so takes it away. And by taking it away, he awakens the witch, and she goes, she just gets mad, the priestess, and so she, goes to steal it back, because the cult is actually still alive. People just don't know about it because it's very quiet. But it's a little convoluted. I had to watch it like 3 times in order to get it because this was directed by Ken Russell, and Lord knows Ken Russell, I swear to God, is the Philip K. Dick of filmmaking. Everything is disjointed, and you actually have to sit there and watch it 3 or 4 times before everything clicks. You know, but again, because it was written by Bram Stoker, it doesn't have a happy ending. Neither does the film. So that's one of the reasons I really enjoyed it. It was a really cool take that was written by the same guy that wrote Dracula, but it was in a different direction from the traditional vampire story that he brought to life. So I recommend, I do recommend it, especially it's a very young Hugh Grant. And honestly, when Peter Capaldi became the Doctor Who,
Yep.
I was like, oh, I gotta watch the movie again because I recognized that he had been in it. I couldn't even recognize him. He was so young in this movie. But yeah, I recommend it. It's a completely different take on the whole vampire mythos, and so you guys might actually enjoy it. There's a weird priestess running around, giant snake heads, blah 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 blah. So yeah, that was really cool. But it, like I said, it was a different take on the vampire story, the traditional vampire story. So, and I gotta say, this was an honorable mention, and I gotta give a hat tip to MD over in the KLRN chat because he asked, "Is anybody going to talk about this one?" And I said, "That's actually my honorable mention for the best takes on the actual vampire story." And that one's a movie called Near Dark, and that one came out also late '80s, around there, and it starred Adrian Pasdar, who most people would recognize from the TV show Heroes. And Lance Henriksen is in it, and Bill Paxton was in it, if I recall. So that one was actually a really cool take because it's more like a Western vampire story. So, cowboys are involved. So that was kind of cool for me.
Cowboys.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It was actually a really cool concept, and I enjoyed it. And most people are like, in the a cowboy vampire. I'm like, look, I mean, we've had gay vampires, we've had all sorts of vampires. Why not cowboy ones? But how about you? Any others?
Well, I do have one honorable mention, and I don't know if anybody's heard of this one because it came out a long time ago. It's called Nosferatu: A Symphony of Horror. It came out in 1922.
Oh yeah, the original, the OG. Yep.
And again, has Count Orlok.
Yes, yes. There, that was that was a nod from Dracula 3000 that they gave, and not Nosferatu. I can't watch that. I'm sorry. I watched it once, thought it was great, never again. That creature still scares me to this day. I swear there's an episode of SpongeBob that has Nosferatu in it, and I cannot watch that episode.
And you're like, nope, not doing it.
Nope, 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 nope.
Yeah, so that was my silver screen honorable mention. I have one more for small screen, and it was put out by AMC a few years ago, starring Zachary Quinto. Same name, different spelling, because in this instance it was spelled out like a license plate, NOS4A2. And it is a slightly different take on vampirism, and only ran for 2 seasons and actually got canceled. But it was really good. I actually enjoyed it. It was one of the rare shows. There were a couple times when I had difficulty sleeping after watching it, just because of how well. And this was shortly after Quinto kind of skyrocketed a little bit with the reboots. So seeing him play a different role, I thought it would be kind of difficult because normally when you play something as iconic as a Star Trek character, you kind of get stuck that way. He didn't have that problem. He's actually already doing another series on NBC that's pretty damn good too. But this one, I have to admit, it took me a couple episodes to get used to it. But once I did, he did such a good job playing the character, and it's actually based on a book too. So it was really, really
Who put it out?
it was
What channel?
I think it was AMC if I remember right.
Oh, okay. I if it only lasted 2 seasons, then it wasn't FX. Those only last 1 season. All the good ones get canceled after 1 season.
Yeah, I'm looking it up now to be sure, but yeah, I'm pretty sure it was AMC. Yeah, it ran for 2 seasons. It had Zachary Quinto, Ashley Cummings, Olafur Darry Olafsson, who played kind of a slower character in it, but he did a really good job. And yeah, it looks like it was based on Joe Hill's New York Times best-selling novel of the same name. It's a different kind of vampire story. It follows Vic McQueen, a gifted young woman who discovers she has a supernatural ability to find lost things. This ability puts her on a collision course with the evil immortal Charlie Manx. Manx is a supernatural villain who feeds off the souls of children and then deposits what remains of them into a purgatory of his own creation he calls Christmas Land. And basically, it's a twisted place of his own imagination where every day is Christmas Day and unhappiness is against the law. Vic strives to defeat Manx and rescue his victims without losing her mind or falling victim to him. And it was ran June 2019 to August of 2020, created by Jamie O'Brien.
Wow, that's a shame. I mean, it seems like their original stuff gets canceled a lot quicker than the regular tropey stuff.
Yeah,
know?
you would think. I mean, like I said, it was a decent show. I mean, if anybody who hasn't seen it and wants to see it, you can see it on either AMC Plus if you have it, or Prime Video has it. And it's a fun watch. I mean, this would be the perfect month to watch it, especially if you're a Quinto fan.
All right. Well, for me, now are the bad takes on vampire lore, vampire stories, the ones that I just think, no. My number one, and I really wanted to like this movie because I actually read the book and I thought it was interesting, and I figured, well, I'm sure that the movie would be kind of cool too and everything, but it just didn't work. Abraham Lincoln, Vampire Hunter.
Blasphemy.
I'm sorry. I just did not like it. I was like, I was so prepared to like this film because I did read the book and I enjoyed it. I thought it was a really cool concept. I also read Pride, Prejudice, and and Sense and Sensibility and Sea Monsters. Yeah, Pride, Prejudice, and Zombies, and Sense and Sensibility and Sea Monsters. And so, those all came out around the same time. But, when the movie came out, I thought that it would have that level of humor running through it. And there was absolutely no dark humor. No, it was too weight. It was too heavy for what I had read. And maybe I read it wrong, which is a complete and total possibility. But it just didn't work for me. Now, I know a lot of people enjoyed it. Apparently, my co-host did, since I was just called a blasphemer.
A fun
but
movie.
For a lot of people, yes, it was. And like I said, I enjoyed the book. I just didn't think that the film translated from the book. And it's my downfall every time. People will go and watch a film and recommend it to me and everything. It'll be based on a book, and I will go read the book before I go watch the movie. And it is my downfall. It is my Achilles heel. It is my kryptonite. It is, the stake through the heart for me, because it will absolutely ruin the film. So nowadays, if I know a film is actually based on a book, I will purposely buy the book and lock it away and put away the key or give the key to my husband or whatever, so that I'm not tempted to read the book before I go watch this movie. That way the movie is not ruined for me. And I think that's why this movie was kind of ruined for me, because I did read the book. I enjoyed the book. I thought the book was, really really fresh, a really good take and everything. And I expected that to translate, and it didn't. But like I said, I can be wrong, and it's okay.
Oh, I didn't say you're wrong. I just disagree with you. That doesn't mean you're wrong. All right.
Another one.
Oh, you got more? No, go ahead.
I have 3 under the worst takes. You want me to do them all, and then you can do all yours?
You might as well do all of yours, because I only have one worst take, because some of my worst takes were already mixed in with the worst movies, but I do have one that I wanted to save for the very end. So you might as well do yours.
Well, another one was, okay, I have 3. Obviously, I already shit on one. Do you remember the movie Ultraviolet?
I do, yes.
That was a really interesting take, and it could have done a little better, and I like the concept where she could will her weapons, out of her body and everything. That was really cool, but they did not expand on the vampirism enough in that film, and that's where it failed to me. And it just it could have been done better. It could have been done better. So for me, that was a fail. Although I did like the different take on the tale, but like I said, they didn't expand the vampire part of the story enough. They were too concerned with the kid and this and that and her fighting everybody and all this stuff. So I was just like, yeah, but what about the vampires, And then the other one was a movie that came out, and I think it's either based on young adult fiction. I'm not sure. I never read the book or saw if it was a TV show or whatever, but Vampire Academy. It had a good concept.
I've heard a little bit about that one, but I don't think I ever watched it.
It had a good concept. There were 3 races of there were 3 races. 2 were vampires, and 1 was a race of vampire caretakers. And so the vampire caretakers were matched with one of the good vampires. The bad vampires were the strigoi. They're the ones that actually drain a body and kill it. And that's where you pass on to being an evil vampire. And then you had the regular vampires, which were like regular people, but they had to feed, so they paid people to come in and, be drained of blood by the vampires, that, they made friends with the people they fed on. And, so there was a good concept there, but they never finished it. And it ends on a cliffhanger. So it's not necessarily, it does not end well. It's just that there's a cliffhanger, and there was no movie to explain where that cliffhanger was going to go. So for me, that one was kind of a fail. Okay, you can go.
All right, so there's actually one fairly decent adaptation that I almost forgot about, that I want to give out real quick. This was a Netflix series called Van Helsing. I don't know if anybody's watched it, but I actually absolutely love this one all the way through till about, and again, much like Amish, and I say all the time, 5th season isn't real. Didn't happen. First 4 seasons were amazing. But it was a really fun watch. So if you haven't watched it yet, it is still available on Netflix, apparently, as long as you don't have the ad-supported one. Because I'm not logged into my account, and it said this is unavailable on ad-supported plan due to licensing restrictions. But yeah, it starred Kelly Overton, and she was in a coma for 3 years. She wakes up to find the world completely ravaged by vampires, and now she and a motley band of fellow survivors fight to stay alive, is the description on Netflix. but there's all kinds of undertones and other things that you find out later. It's definitely kind of a fun watch and probably perfect for this time of year. But as far as my worst take on vampire lore, this actually is going to encompass vampires and werewolves, since according to certain lore, they're basically cousins. The movie put out by Stephen King that still makes me cringe to this day came out in 1992. Sleepwalkers. So it's it's one of those movies that it's so bad it kind of becomes good if you can get past the whole incest vibe. But yeah, so this one is just weird all the way around because it's kind of a weird take on like vampire lore, werewolf lore, and then there's like this whole amount of there's like this whole incestuous relationship between mom and kid, and it's just weird as hell. Also, this was early CGI days, so yeah, some of it definitely, trash. Don't expect top-notch dialogue. I mean, as far as Stephen King movies go, it's probably one of his worst, even worse than some of his more recent stuff. But I mean, it's just so nonsensical, and the dialogue doesn't make sense half the time. So it kind of almost is a fun watch, almost, but still.
Did he direct it, or is it just based on one of his novellas?
No, this is one of his first. This is actually one of his first original screenplays.
Ah, okay.
So it's based on one of his books. He did the screenplay adaptation, and it was terrible. Terrible. To tell you where it ranks, this is like a list that I found where I started pulling stuff from when I just started doing notes. This is the top 16 worst vampire films of all time. This one is actually only ranked as 14, but specifically only because they said they half enjoyed it. So it's right up there with Vampire in Brooklyn because it's number 13 in this list.
Dang. Okay.
Yeah, it's just it was just terrible. And then, I mean, in 1992, I graduated high school. I wasn't a young kid or anything, but watching the scene where mom and son were like, I was like, eh. Luckily, I was watching it on a VHS tape, so I was able to fast forward past the part.
Yikes. Yikes. All right, I guess. Do you have any more? I only have my funny ones.
I didn't do funny ones, so knock yourself out.
Okay, so my top 3 funny Dracula movies, and you all know, if you know me, this will make sense. Obviously, Dracula, Dead and Loving It. I don't care how badly it was panned. It's a Mel Brooks film, and it was Leslie Nielsen, and I will die on that hill. Love at First Bite. I love that movie. George Hamilton is just amazing. And let me tell you, if you want to have a great campy day, get that movie and get Zorro the Gay Blade and just admire the beauty that is George Hamilton, okay? And my last one was actually one of the newer ones, and it inspired a series by the same name, What We Do in the Shadows. That was hilarious because it showed vampires with like everyday headaches, like how to pay the rent, the electricity bill, getting along with their roommates, that kind of stuff. And it just made them more human. And it was hilarious. I really enjoyed that one. I need to watch the TV show. I still haven't done so, but those are my favorite funny ones.
And yeah, I think Ordy's pointing out that one of the ones I was talking about actually started on Sci-Fi. I don't remember. That's been forever ago. But
anyway. Well, that's it for me.
I did find it funny that Jeff in the chat was like, "Ooh, Life Force." I'm like, "Yeah, we talked about
that." I know. I kind of said, "Gee, I guess he wasn't here when I was talking about it."
Well, I mean, in his defense, he probably was getting a beer.
Oh yeah, no, Totally, totally. And I really can't blame him. So
I
there's
mean,
that.
why he doesn't have us playing on his phone and earbuds at the same time while he's getting beers, I'll never understand. But who am I to
Well,
judge?
I'll be honest, I don't do that either. I actually will take my laptop with me if it's very important. I'm not a very tech savvy person, okay?
Jeff doesn't have that excuse though.
I don't I MD has a really interesting question over the KLRN chat. How does a vampire get a tan like George Hamilton's? I don't know, but I will tell you this. It's probably because George Hamilton was actually hawking self-tanning stuff on QVC for a long time. I'm not even kidding.
Funny thing is,
It's-
I was about to say spray tan.
yeah, self-tanning. Anyway, well, that's pretty much my whole list. I don't know if you wanted to add any more to it.
No, I don't really think I have any more. I mean, we actually covered almost every. I actually didn't even think that. I mean, I mixed in a couple of funny ones and my worst ones, so I didn't really think about doing a separate category for the funny ones, or I probably would have had a few more. But I think we covered the topic really well.
Yeah, I had a lot of fun. So,
and apparently 403 people liked it. So,
oh, nice. Why don't you go ahead and tell us where we can find you?
It's easier to tell me where you not to look for me because it's a trap. Don't do it. Anyway, for those of you so inclined, you're welcome to follow along with me on X on @RowdyRick73. You can follow along with the station at KLRM Radio and our new news arm at Digital Beacon US. I will be here tomorrow evening pushing buttons for Front Porch Forensics, and then later that night also Juxtaposition as we continue our deep dive into vampires with myself and Ordinance J. Packard. Sunday night, I'll be back doing America Off the Rails. As far as I know, that's still running at 9:30 p.m. Eastern for now. And then Monday, I am off. Tuesday through Friday next week, I will be doing the Rick Robinson show from noon to 3 in the afternoon hours. And then Tuesday night, I'll be on the Manorama panel with Ranker Steve and the crew over there. And then Wednesday, full boat. So we have Whatever with myself and Stacy at 7 p.m. Eastern. The Conservative Curmudgeon at 8 p.m. Eastern. Behind Enemy Lines right now at 9 p.m. Eastern. And then Ordy and I at 10 p.m. Eastern-ish. And then Thursday night, Jen and Rick. Friday night, back around with you. And then Saturday, because it's October, we'll be doing Chuck's again. Yeah, along with, I believe Front Porch is requested to go all month October too. So we're just going to leave the video feed running for the 3-4 hours that we're doing this stuff because it was hectic last month trying to change between, or last week trying to change between the two feeds. I can do the podcast separately in video and just leave the video feeds up. It'll be fine. But anyway, so where can folks find you? Because I think I've covered almost everything. And if I haven't, they've heard it a million times by now anyway.
You can find me at Aggie Beacon and at Aggie the Barkeep. Those are over on X. You can find me 8:30 p.m. Eastern Tuesday nights during the Cocktail Lounge with the ever suave Martini Shark, also known as Brad Slager. You can find me 8:30 p.m. Eastern Friday nights doing He Said, She Said with the awesome Rowdy Rick. That's you. Last Wednesday of every month at 8 p.m. Eastern, the guys get together to discuss toxic masculinity. We host a Babe of the Month, and I bring the Eat Drink of the Evening. And last but not least, Jeff and I now have a book podcast called Spirited Books, where we take tomes that are outside of our comfort zone or pretty unknown, and we read them and review them. And stay tuned for November because we're going to have our friend MD Campbell back again as a guest reviewing one of his books. So, and that it will be the first Monday of November at 8:30 p.m. Eastern, also known as Aggie Time.
You could make this a lot easier at this point if you just give the list first and then say on these days at Aggie Time.
Yes, I should do that. Anyway, thanks for joining us, everyone, and we hope you have a great evening.
Thanks for hanging out with us, everybody. And for those of you new around here, because we seem to be attracting new listeners every day and new watchers every day, we hope you like what we do here. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, please email Amish. No, I'm just kidding. You can reach out to me at rick@klrradio.com, and we will see what we can do to help take care of whatever your concerns are. And thank you so much for hanging out with us on a Friday night. By the way, this means we broke over 1,000 today, network wide for the day. So
Wow.
everybody knows.